Hello, I'm Larry Taylor with theunstuckspirit.com. I'm a spiritual director and a spiritual life coach, and uh, I was reflecting on the fact that back in, I believe it was 1965, a man named Walter Martin published a book called The Kingdom of the Cults, and it's still very popular today in some circles. And basically, he goes chapter by chapter comparing um, Orthodox, um, Protestant, fundamentalist, evangelical doctrine with the doctrines of other faith groups, uh, like the Church of Jesus Christ, the Latter day Saints, Mormons, or like Jehovah's Witnesses, and that sort of thing. And I'm not here to talk about that book or those groups in any way, but what that book did with its popularity was it provided in many church circles a definition of cult uh, based on uh, a belief system. Here's a set of doctrines which we, or at least Walter Martin, considers orthodox and essential. And these other groups differ with that orthodox list on several significant points, and so therefore we call them cults. That, however, is not the normal definition of the word cult in modern vernacular. Normally, in modern speech, we use the word cult not so much to mean a group that has a differing belief system, but to describe a group that is manipulative, that is controlling, and that is abusive. And that's the definition of cult that I use. So when I speak of a cult, I am, or a group that is cult-like or cultic, I do not mean necessarily that I disagree with their belief system or with their doctrine. What I'm looking at there are groups that manipulate, groups that control people, groups that some of them even pretty close to brainwashing, um, groups that are toxic in their function. Their doctrine, their belief system may or may not be orthodox. That's doesn't come into the definition. You can be very, very mainline Orthodox, lined up with traditional Christianity, and still be a cult by the definition that I'm using. So, with that as a little introduction, um, we, we can look around us, and maybe you've experienced, maybe you've been a part of a faith community. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a Christian faith community. I use those as examples just because that's what I'm familiar with. But it could be a Buddhist faith community, it could be a Hindu faith community, an Islamic faith community, um, a Jewish faith community. But what I'm getting at is that there are religious groups, religious faith communities um, that I would describe as cults because, not necessarily because their doctrine is wrong or all for unorthodox, but because they manipulate people, because they are toxic in controlling people. And there's many different ways that they do that. typically, those groups that are in that category are characterized by the fact that they have a central, strong, very charismatic leader. The groups that I'm thinking of would be the senior pastor or the senior minister in those groups. Typically, that person is seen as all-knowing. That person does not allow people around him. It's typically a him, a male person. Doesn't allow people around him who would correct or criticize. The leader tends to be top down, dictatorial, runs the faith community like a CEO who has complete control over it. That's a red flag when you have an organization that is run like that. But in addition to that, that leader will often in his sermons, in his public talks, present his belief in contrast to the beliefs of other people, and in such a way that he's putting down the other people, that he's denigrating the other people, or at least denigrating what they believe. There's also, in these cultic kinds of congregations, there is a sense that one must conform. It may not be explicitly stated, but to be accepted as a part of this group, it's important to believe what everybody else believes. It's important that you not question the central tenets of the particular group, whatever it is. Typically, people are sort of funneled into thinking alike, voting alike, having the same political views, sometimes even looking alike. Diversity is not a big priority in cultic kinds of congregations. And those sorts of churches also typically are very rigid when it comes to behavior. Men have to act like this. Women have to act like this. This is the role of the man. This is the role of the women. This is the role of the children. Everything's kind of has a feeling of walking in lockstep. Now, it's not for me to, judge what's toxic and what isn't. But if you find yourself in a group where your thoughts are being almost feels like your thoughts are being controlled, where you feel like you're not allowed to ask questions, where you're not allowed to have a differing opinion, that can be a toxic situation. And it too often gives rise to bad behavior. Oftentimes there's a misuse of money. Oftentimes women are put in a situation where they wind up being pulled into toxic, unhealthy relationships. The leadership is typically very narcissistic. Um, and um, it often sets the stage for clergy abuse, sexual abuse, most especially. If you suspect that you are a part of a group like that, personally, I would encourage you to get out. If you were a part of a group like that and you have gotten out, congratulations, you've made a good first step. But very likely you've been wounded by your experience in that group. Most especially if you were in that group for a long time, and most especially if you grew up in a situation like that. That's part of what I do as a spiritual director is I walk with people, accepting them where they are, with all their hurts and with all their baggage and with all the scars and the bloody wounds from the toxic situations, and try to create a sacred space so that we can walk together in the Spirit, listening to the voice of God's Spirit, and come out of be healed of the results of that toxic cultic relationship and enter into the freedom which really belongs to us as children of God. Sadly, many people have experienced toxic church situation, faith community situation, and their reaction to it is to throw the baby out with the bathwater, to have nothing to do with, it's all baloney. Get rid of all of it. Well, it isn't all baloney. God exists, and God loves you, and God would delight to place God's loving arms around you and enfold you in grace. And if you'd like a companion to walk with you in that, you can get in touch with me through my website, which is theunstuckspirit.com. God bless you.